everyone. Happy Monday. For some folks, it could be sorry guys, I'm just situating things here. For some people, it's a motivational Monday. Other people, it's a mindful Monday. And I think that's where we sit here on the Other Side podcast. My name is Janelle Villiers, and I am your host. And we talk about all of the things that you could possibly want to talk about as it relates to mental health. I'm all about mental health and how we can get on the other side of this journey that we're on, where it's just something that we maintain, right? This mental health is a maintenance game. It's not a, oh, I'm now healed game. That's not what this is. And so it's just one of the ways in which I try to be helpful, because I know that we're all doing this together, right? Where no one's alone. And so here we are on another Monday for today's show. So what is the topic today? What are we going to be talking about? I know a lot of you saw it earlier on social media. I'm actually really excited about today's topic. Why do we self-sabotage? Why do we self-sabotage? First off, if this is your first time here, let me know and put a 1 in the comments so I can shout you out. If this is not your first time, if you've been here already, go ahead and put a 2 in the comments. I love to see the people who come back to chop it up with me and talk about different areas of mental health. And so anybody here ever feel like they've actually done something to self-sabotage themselves? Something? Anybody feel like this is something that they may have done? Maybe raise your hand. If you feel like you at some point in your life may have actually done something that was holding you back or keeping you from, doing what you knew you could do, go ahead and put a Y in the comments so I know I am not alone. And the Y stands for yes, you have done that. So some people, I think, though, first need to even understand what self-sabotage is. They're like, I don't know, am I self-sabotaging? Sometimes people don't even recognize when they're doing it. So the questions I always love to ask is, have you ever found yourself like delaying the task that you need to do, right? It's a little bit of procrastination. Let's be honest, a lot of bit of procrastination, especially the important things that you need to do, right? And you just seem to be delaying actually doing them. You'll find yourself on social media, you'll be reading a book, you'll have a conversation with your friend, a family member, right? Anything to delay actually doing the thing that you know you need to do, right? And I think for a lot of people, that comes from this fear of like, it needs to be perfect. If it's not going to be perfect, I don't even want to begin, that kind of a thing. Or fear of failure. Like if I do it and then it doesn't do right, like, so then you just kind of like prolong the process, right? I just always say, rip the Band-Aid. Another thing, have you ever found yourself talking really negatively about yourself? Just, I can't do this. I'm a failure. There's no way I can get this done. People think I'm an idiot. People will just see me for who I really am. I'm a failure. I'm nobody. I'm not good enough, right? If that's the kind of self-talk that you have, it can lead to self-sabotaging behavior for sure. Perhaps you're someone who identifies as a perfectionist, right? And you're just like, look, if like, we're not going to get started until we know that we're going to do it right, because it's got to be right, like 100% right. So we're just not even going to get started because it's got to be right. So you kind of avoid starting or even completing a task because you have these unrealistic goals as to what perfection is supposed to look like. And so again, you're putting things off. Avoiding just responsibility. So maybe you're up for a promotion, or if you do like this other task, or if you gain another responsibility, that would be amazing for you, could lead to a promotion potentially. But yeah, you're not doing that. You're dodging that, maybe even, right? And so for sure, another sign of self-sabotage there. And then finally, relationships. You guys know I love talking about relationships. In other episodes, we've talked a lot about this, but it's who we are. We're humans. We interact with each other all the time. And so you may find that you start to participate in behaviors that aren't really helpful for the relationship. You're just always finding something wrong, a reason to complain. You're just causing conflicts all the time. Maybe you're overly critical of your partner. You're just always like, they're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong. You're doing that. Why are you doing it that way? Right? Like just overly critical for no reason, right? Like you're just nitpicking for no reason. Or maybe you're just avoiding conflicts. Just you're withdrawing completely, right? You're just like taking yourself emotionally out of this relationship. You're just like, nope, not even going to do that, right? And so without dealing with the situation, right, then it almost feels like the relationship isn't important enough for you to even get into whatever that conflict may be or to deal with the situation. And so the other person may feel like, oh, maybe I'm not that important to them, or they don't really love me that much, right? So ultimately, sabotaging are just like a good relationship, right? But now you're like doing all these things to make it fall apart, right? Or to cause challenges within the relationship. So if you found yourself doing any of these things, procrastinating, the like constant negative self-talk, the perfectionism, the avoiding the responsibilities, and even, undermining relationships that you have, these could be signs of, not could be, excuse me, these are signs of self-sabotage. And so you may be wondering, okay, why do we do it then? Like, why do we engage in this behavior that is really not productive and is not helpful for us? And so there are many different reasons. I think there are 5 big ones. Fear of failure, right? Like, again, you just have this idea that like if you fail, then that means you are a failure instead of the thing that you did just didn't work out, right? So you somehow identify as the failure itself, like you yourself are a failure. And so, again, instead of, oh, the thing that I did just didn't work out, right? So, and because you have a fear of this failure and this identification with being a failure, it causes you to self-sabotage, right? I would say a lot of shame-based thinking. So you guys have heard me talk about shame-based thinking in the past, but really quickly, that's the I am a mistake. I'm a bad person. I am unworthy. I am ugly. I am unlovable. I am a failure, right? So any of those self-identifying things where other people might say, oh, this can cause low self-esteem, right? Those types of beliefs, for sure. If your image of yourself is nothing but shameful, is nothing but makes you want to like hide and be away from other people, why would you run towards success? Because you don't deserve successful things. So you're gonna mess things up, right? Because you don't deserve anything good, right? If that's the way you think about yourself. Fear of success. There are some people who just really fear the success. They think that the success will bring new expectations or changes, and they're so used to doing things the way that they are currently done that they don't want to move into their move out of their comfort zone, right? So this fear of success can actually be a reason why people self-sabotage and they don't actually do the things that they need to do to grow and to move forward. Perfectionism, we've talked about this before, but I will add that Brene Brown has this amazing quote where she says, "When perfectionism is in the passenger seat, shame is driving the car," right? And so people who are typically like really strong perfectionists must be this perfect, and it has to, like, they set these ridiculous expectations, is usually because they're trying to shield themselves from the critique of others, but the truth of the matter, and judgment of others, but the truth of the matter is they're really judging themselves or critiquing themselves. See, you didn't do it, you're a failure, you're not good enough, like all those things, right? So being a perfectionist, the shame, again, comes back to the shame-based thinking, but it's another big reason why we self-sabotage. And then I want to go back to this comfort and familiarity bit. We're creatures of habit for sure. And so getting out of your comfort zone, that's the only time when something amazing typically happens. Taking a risk, doing something that you've never done before, potentially not doing it well, right? Like, that's how we learn. And yet we try to like stay where we are. And so we will literally keep ourselves from doing the things that would actually take us into a new place in space. And that includes relationships. Sometimes we're so used to being in unhealthy relationships that when we get into a healthy relationship, we'll do something quote unquote crazy to mess it up or to sabotage it because we're so used to the unhealthy. So we're trying to get back to the thing that we're used to. We're trying to get back to the thing that we're comfortable with. And I mean, if you're out there thinking, oh man, like I know somebody who did that, maybe you're the person who did that, right? Put that in the comments. Let me know if you know somebody who's done that, right? Self-sabotage a really healthy relationship. So all of these things are reasons why we engage in self-sabotaging behavior, right? So a fear of failure, the shame-based thinking or low self-esteem, the fear of success sometimes, perfectionism, of course, and then this comfort zone that we're not ready to leave yet. So what are some strategies? So what are some things that we can do to combat the self-sabotage that we may be engaging in? And so number one is the self-awareness. We've talked about this a lot. Like if you're not aware of what's going on, then how can you fix it, right? You got to name it to tame it. And so I would say once you're aware that you may be even self-sabotaging, then you have to figure out like, okay, so what are the triggers? Like what's, I recognize I just self-sabotaged, but what happened? Like what happened that made me think, oh, I gotta procrastinate, or oh, I gotta mess up this relationship? Like what's going on there? And so when you start to really pay attention to those things, then you can identify, oh, that's the thing that had me feel that way, whether it's, oh my God, I gotta do it perfectly, or oh my God, somebody might see that I'm a failure, so let me not do this thing. Let me not accept the responsibility of doing this next big thing, and it's because I was triggered to think that people might see me as a failure. I was triggered to not want to get out of my comfort zone, right? Like I was feeling like, oh, I'm about to get out of my comfort, whatever that trigger is. But identifying that, then you can say, okay, that was the trigger. So now I can look at that differently and think, okay, you know what? I'm going to get out of my comfort zone. And it's okay. It's okay. I can talk to other people about this. I don't feel comfortable, but I'm going to give it a go. I may not do it completely, right? Completely to perfection, but I'm going to do the best I can, right? I'm going to pursue excellence. I'm going to do the best I can. And so in that way, you set realistic goals, right? So the next step in combating self-sabotage includes like creating realistic goals. Don't make a goal like, oh, I'm going to get a $10,000 raise in the next 2 months if you think like, oh, that's really not going to happen, right? But you can start to do things that could maybe get you the $10,000 raise in maybe 6 months to a year, right? Like, I'm going to take on this one other task, right? I'm going to do that as part of my goal. Or, I've been procrastinating putting something together, but I'm just going to start off with like, I'm going to work on this for 10 minutes and see how far I get. Just 10 minutes. That way it doesn't seem like, like you're overburdening yourself with responsibilities. Or sometimes it's just the 10 minutes that gets you started, and then like you're like, all right, here we go, we're chugging along. I had another friend tell me recently that they were self-sabotaging this particular aspect of what they were doing in terms of scheduling. Like they wanted to be consistent, and they were sabotaging their ability to be consistent because they weren't scheduling things in their calendar. And I was curious to know, why was that? Like, why do you think you did that? And it came down to just it's boring. Like, it's something that I don't think is fun. And so because it's not fun, I don't engage in this, like, this activity of just scheduling something. But I know if it was scheduled, I'd be more consistent. And so we talked about, like, what could you do to make it fun, right? So if you break down tasks and make them manageable and easier to do, I would also say add some fun in there. Celebrate some progress. Oh, I did the thing. I actually scheduled my calendar for the day. I'm going to give myself a treat. I'm going to treat myself to a massage. I'm going to treat myself to, 10 minutes of reading like my favorite book that I hardly ever feel like I get to read. I don't know, whatever a really good treat would be for you, but you could do something like that. You could treat yourself, celebrate your progresses. That's always really helpful. Or make it fun, right? Try to do something to make it fun. The other thing is practicing the mindfulness, right? So you're just constantly aware. It's a part of the awareness, being able to identify the triggers. But the mindfulness also picks up on when you start doing the negative self-talk, so then you can combat it with positive self-talk. I would say also not just talk to yourself, but talk to other people. Create a supportive network or group of friends who you can share these thoughts with. So it's not just you all the time trying to deal with this. You'll find that a lot of times it's not just you. There are other people who are feeling very similarly. So whether it's just talking to one person, maybe even a therapist, or a group of people, maybe it's a club that you're in or a support group or something like that. All of it works, right? And then, setting an action plan that has boundaries with your time. I mean, the scheduling is a real easy example to give, because it's like, oh, I'm only going to spend 30 minutes on this one task. I do not have time to spend more than that because for the next hour, I need to do this other task or I need to meet with a certain person. And so you're setting boundaries with your time. So that way it allows you to have the freedom of time to do the things that you really enjoy. And then just monitor how it's going, right? So that way you can reward yourself. You can celebrate the progress that you've made. So just to recap, some of the things that we can do, some strategies, some tips that we can employ to help combat the self-sabotaging behavior is the awareness, right? Being mindful that you're even self-sabotaging, identifying the triggers that got you to get to that place. Maybe there's a belief behind that you want to acknowledge and then reflect on and see what you can do differently. You want to then create realistic goals, break down the tasks that you have to do into simple things that you can actually achieve, not things that seem like that'll never happen, right? Like small little things that you're like, yeah, I could do that. And then celebrate it. Celebrate the progress that you've made. Identify it, give yourself a treat, or make it fun. Make what the task, what you're doing, fun. I'm telling you, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong, right? And with the mindfulness, you're going to identify when you have negative self-talk so you can switch that up to make it into positive self-talk. And then talk to other people, whether it's one person or a group of people. All of the above works. We are social creatures, so talking with somebody is really important. And then finally, setting the clear boundaries, making sure you're doing what you need to do. A lot of times it's with people. You need to set boundaries with people. You can't spend time with certain people because you know things just won't get done. So you spend less time with those people whenever possible. And of course, you want to monitor the progress so that way you can celebrate. If you found this really helpful, please let me know in the comments that this was valuable for you. I really want to hear it. This really helps me. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. This tells all of the algorithms, literally Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, that this is valuable. So that way it will get to more people's feed. And that means the world to me as we continue to grow as a community. I appreciate you all. It doesn't cost you anything, right? So it'd be really helpful. And of course, share it. That's like the biggest thank you, that if you think this is really valuable, please share it with your friends, family, and loved ones. Until next week, I look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a great night, everyone.